tape right now because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden is the best Biden ever.
So the drug war. So the Alex Karakastanis tweets this out. Good catch. There's an article in the New York Times about big drug bust. A fake trip and a stunning betrayal landed top cartel leaders in U.S. hands. Okay? So I'll cut to the chase. He says, nothing to see here, just two throwaway lines in the New York Times article about one of the biggest drug arrests in years that yet again shows that no one thinks the drug enforcement is about reducing drug use or violence. The war on drugs is a total fraud. And so what does he show you here? Falco Ernst, a senior analyst at the International Crisis Group. By the way, Falco Ernst sounds like someone Tom Cruise has to disguise himself as in his next Mission Impossible film, right? So Falco Ernst, a senior analyst at the International Crisis Group, said it was unlikely that the arrests would have a major impact on smuggling of fentanyl or other drugs from Mexico, since the cartel was deeply decentralized organization already. We aren't talking about a structure that depends on a few kingpins. It's very diffuse and resilient to these kinds of hits. Mr. Ernst said, if anything, he said, the move could spark more violence. So our prosecution of the drug war doesn't stop drugs, but it does create more violence. So basically, it's like all our other wars for the last 80 years. It doesn't help anything, and it just makes more violence. So here is that's the headline from the New York Times. The arrests in the United States of two top leaders of a Sinaloa drug, is that how you say it? Sinaloa drug cartel came after what initial accounts suggest was a dramatic betrayal that saw one of the men, a son of the notorious drug lord known as El Chapo, lure the other under false pretenses onto a plane that delivered them both into the hands of the American law enforcement. Really? It's got to be awkward for everybody when the cartels realize they're just dealing with another cartel, but with jet fighters. One of the operatives taken into custody, Ismael Zambada Garcia, was arguably the most powerful criminal in Mexico. A septuagenarian kingpin who helped to found the Sinaloa cartel with El Chapo decades ago and remained at large even after his partner was extradited to the United States and convicted at a trial in New York City. The other was one of El Chapo's own sons, Joaquin Guzman Lopez, who, with his brothers, had inherited a large swath of their father's illicit business, moving massive amounts of cocaine and fentanyl into the United States, Europe, and elsewhere. The two men were arrested at a small local airport outside of El Paso, Texas. We were just there, lovely show. And on Thursday afternoon, after their Beechcraft King airplane landed there on a flight from Mexico, Mr. Guzman Lopez had persuaded Mr. Zambada Garcia to join him on the flight by saying they were going to look at real estate, officials said, but the plane instead headed north across the border. The arrests were hailed by officials in Washington as a major victory for U.S. law enforcement, a major victory that's not going to stop the flow of drugs and just create more violence. So it's a major victory for law enforcement, which has accused Mr. Guzman's sons, known collectively as the Chapitos, for being among the world's leading smugglers of fentanyl. Fentanyl is the deadliest drug threat our country. Yeah, and this isn't going to do anything to stop it. The Justice Department will not rest until every single cartel leader, member, and associate responsible for poisoning our communities is held accountable. Okay. Falco Ernst, a senior analyst at the International Crisis Group, said it was unlikely that the arrests would have a major impact on the smuggling of fentanyl or other drugs from Mexico. So he says the arrests, what he's saying is the arrests are meaningless. And he means it. The arrests are meaningless. The Justice Department will not rest until every single cartel leader, member, and associate responsible for poisoning our communities is held accountable. And since that will literally never happen, we will enjoy eternal job security prosecuting a bullshit drug war that is a complete failure. If anything, he said, the move could spark more violence as factions vie for control amid a vacuum of power at the very top. There's already a bunch of pressure on that structure, and there has been a lot of infighting. So we're definitely facing a scenario of greater violence potentially. After the news of Mr. Zambata Garcia's arrest, Mexicans on social media began circulating an interview with the drug lord published by Proceso magazine in 2010. In it, Mr. Zambata Garcia mused about what would happen if he ever turned himself in to the authorities. My case should be exemplary, a lesson for everyone, he said. But after a few days, we learned nothing has changed. Referring to cartel bosses, he said, locked up, dead, or extradited, their replacements are already out there. So he said this 14 years ago, nothing is going to change. You can lock up the heads of all the cartels. Nothing's ever going to change. You're never going to stop the drugs. Wow. Also, because the main smuggler of these drugs
hairy
is the
legs.
CIA.
That turn blonde in the
this
sun.
This is working as intended.
And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool.
After 40 years, the drug war has cost more than $1 trillion.
And then watch the hair come back
caused
up
over
again.
50 million people to be caged, almost all of them poor, including over 20 million for marijuana. It's caused an estimated hundreds of millions of police stops that meet legal definition of kidnapping. The drug war has caused tens of millions of years in prison, separated tens of millions of children from their parents, cost tens of millions of people their education, houses, and ability to make a living. It has caused millions of square acres of pristine land to be sprayed with poisoned. So the drug war has caused tens of millions of people their right to vote. It's killed hundreds of thousands in militarized drug war and U.S.-led murders in Latin America, led to the militarization and widespread surveillance by local police and federal agents of every U.S. city. The drug war has deprived hundreds of millions of people low-cost, sustainable treatments for a wide range of illnesses, cost millions of people billions of dollars in wealth from police civil forfeiture seizures of their property, and has led to mass spread of infectious disease. This is what the drug war has done. The vast majority of these horrific consequences were inflicted on people for personal use of certain substances and exercise of bodily autonomy that other countries have protected, and that this country protects and allows profit for harmful substances like alcohol and tobacco. All of this was done in ways that dramatically increased the racial disparities in every facet of life. And almost all of it targeted the poorest people in our society. Students at boarding schools and Ivy League universities used drugs without fear. Laws weren't meant for those people. The war on drugs is a war on you. That's what this is. It's a war on you that you probably didn't have any idea was even being waged against you. It is. Imagine what this country would look like if the government actually cared about its people. We'll never know. We'll never find that out. Government bureaucrats know all of these statistics, and yet the war on drugs continues in every city and every town every single day. Why would sophisticated people pursue strategies that are so counterproductive and destructive to their stated goals? Well, the only reasonable conclusion is that the war on drugs is not about flourishing communities and ending drug use. It's about profit. It's about racism, surveillance, and social control. Seen this way, the system is actually quite efficient and effective. I'll leave you with this quote from Nixon's top advisors explaining their decision to launch the war on drugs, because that's when the war on drugs started. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black. But by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. Incredible to see these lines in a story about some of the biggest drug arrests of all time. So that's a huge drug arrest. And guess what? It's only going to make things worse. I lived the biggest drug crime of in the world. We all lived through. And it was for the profit of Big Pharma. And I think you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so the drug war officially complete fraud. But a lot of money to be made prosecuting it. Okay, over to stuff.
Okay, thank you. Gon says, I knew this summer was going to be political, but only Trump's could make U.S. politics the #1 reality show of the summer. Gon's. Christopher says, think about it. J.D. Vance is the Dan Quayle of Spiro Agnew's. Think about it.
I don't think so.
Sparky, spoil BlackRock's plan, make Ukraine Russia again. Thank you so much. My real name. Their arrests are meaningful in the way that they will create violence and instability in Mexico, which is what the U.S. wants. My real name.
That's right.
Rochi boy, for a country that turned its back on monarchy, y'all sure staged an amazing coronation for all us in the colonies. When are you coming to Australia, Jimmy? Rochi boy, we are working on it. Just so you know, we will be there. Sonic Warhol, remember Kamala said 220 Americans died from COVID? We only have 330 million in population. Sonic Warhol. Jack Early, thank you, Steph. That amazing, I love Norm's and SNL stuff. I was one of the 2 20-year-olds at your last Zephyr show, and I've been listening to you all since the Tucker interview, and I love you guys. See you again. Jack, thank you, Jack. That was a fun show. Sparky, break it off, and BlackRock make Ukraine Russia again. Kamala looked the other way on Wells Fargo. This account is pending review. Oh, no kidding. Paul Schreier got the Robert Koch Institute protocols released by the court's decision. Now, an unredacted version got leaked to Aya Velasquez, RKI equals CDC, Klaus. Kamala sound like a right-wing hero, SS. Loved the show last night. Was funny when the guy got kicked out. Any chance you could interview Alex Epstein? He writes about the energy sector, and I think a convo between you two would be awesome. Context should matter. Thank you for the recommendation. Right-wingers should like her, SS. This Nepto princesses are fucking unbearable. I've had amazing female bosses, but the upper-class women are unbearable. Nurjan? Have you heard the story out of England today? A man has stabbed and killed 2 children in a Taylor Swift dance class. Wouldn't happen in Venezuela. No, Michael, I haven't read that. Jimmy, the biggest threat to democracy is democracy. And that is why we had to install Kamala. What don't you get about that? Thank you. Space 99 Yak. Gorgeous Mayhem. Oh, I get it. We can question Venezuela's election, but if we question the U.S. 2020 election, we are insurrectionists, homophobic, anti-Semites. You got that right, gorgeous. Props to Misha. Her new Democracy Burger skit was 100% Sir Cramptonian. I've been seeing a lot of people saying that in the chats today. Thank you so much. She hides these things from me. I have to find it out on the street. You're dead to me. Tony B. What happened? If I had $1 for every minute this show was late, I'd have enough to arm the town of Abilene. Mike the Wop. Mike, you know how things roll here. So glad the CIA came out to say they didn't MK Ultra crooks, basically admitting they have brainwashed plenty of other people in the past. Shame that they would have even have to say that they didn't do it. Joybird, back to Jim.
Why did we move from California to Alaska? For starters, they shut down my dad's miniature tractor business because it wasn't EPA compliant or electric. Secondly, you have to smog every vehicle built after 1975. In California, this truck was $1,200 a year to register. Here it's $100 for lifetime tags. You couldn't take an ATV anywhere because every trail was closed off due to public safety. This sawmill, they wanted 1 million board feet worth of taxes for operating. And you can't use any of the lumber for anything structural. And finally, to build our cabin, it would have required 50 times more than we have in the materials of the cabin to get the permits to build it. Why did we move from California to Alaska?
Hey, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there for more AM Joy and the rest of MSNBC. And click on any of the videos right here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. And you can get more videos from MSNBC for free every day with our newsletter. Just visit
Isn't it swell? The memes make themselves. They found a rabbi hole, tunnels and all. There's Jews in the walls. Isn't it bliss? The rabbinical grace soiling the mattresses. Well, let me tell you. If I were Rabbi Shmuley and diddle 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 digga digga diddle diddle dum, all day long I'd diddle little bums. If I were a Shmuley man, I'd peddle all my dildos, dreidel dildos, selling dildos with my daughter and her mum. If I were a Jewish bully man, I'd be digging with a dildo in my bum. I'd wear a grotesque nose and go grab some goyim right on the nipple with a pinch. A Shabbos lap dance brace for the youngest mensch.
At this time, more than any other time, you know, revolution is necessary. It is necessary. Not only based on what has happened with the MOVE organization, you know, the babies that have been murdered, you know, MOVE adults that have been murdered, bombs being dropped on us, but past that to what is happening with all black people, so-called minority people, you know, money poor people. You know, this government, as has been said earlier, has waged war on us. But you know, something about us, particularly here in America, we don't really understand that. You know, we don't really know what war is. You know, for black people, for poor people, that people see as good, that they wasn't forced to do, that they didn't do to try to keep black people appeased, you know, and calm down so that black people wouldn't riot. A prison situation is a crystallized example of that. You can make phone calls in prison. They have movies in prison. But they don't have those things because they just want to be nice to prisoners. They have those things because they know damn well if they don't have, you know, people being able to contact their family, if they don't have, you know, facilities for people to sit there and watch movies, people are going to be frustrated, upset, and they're going to direct that frustration at them prison administrators. And they're going to have riots on their hands. You know, they're going to have people in them prisons turning them prisons out. That's why they have movies. That's why they have access to phones the way they do. And a stop to it when we don't like it, or encouraging it when it's something that's in our interest. You know, we have to call the shots. The people have to take the reins of this system and start dictating, you know, what we need, what needs to be done. And, you know, taking the initiative to do it ourselves. We can't rely on this system. I mean, you know, don't people see what's happening? Every single confrontation that MOVE people have been involved in, every single issue, you know, oppression, economic issues, every single issue facing our people, you know, is something that can be dealt with very, very simply. All people got to do is make their wishes known. All people have to do is stand up and say, listen, we're not accepting that. Unity is the key. Unity is the key to revolution. Revolution ain't nothing to be afraid of. It ain't nothing to shy away from. Revolution, contrary to what officials, you know, this system and those backing the officials running the system, you know, want people to believe that revolution means violence, you know, means blood in the street. I'm saying it can get to that point, but it don't have to be violent. You know, when people come together and take a strong stand on an issue, this government don't have no choice but to listen. Where you think they get their authority from? They don't have no power, but they do have authority to do certain things. Where you think they get it from? They get it from us, from the people. You know, they get it from us accepting the things that they do to be done to stop it. Then you have some people who want to then turn around and say, yeah, well, you know, it's the best we have, and want to make excuses. The time for excuses is over. It's over. You know, every man, woman, and child has to be involved in this revolution. Not only has to be, but is, whether you want to be or not. I mean, our babies gave their lives for this revolution on May 13th. You know, men, women, and children were murdered. And not just MOVE babies, you know. What about all of the young men, women, you know, children 8, 9 years old shot down on the street by cops, you know, by drug pushers? I mean, you know, where do you think that mentality comes from? It comes from this system, from the mentality of this system of getting over, making a quick buck, I'm saying that's where that needs to be done to stop it. Then, what I want people to really, really understand is that it's past time. It is past time for poor people, black people, to realize that this system has failed you. It has failed you. You can't get nothing from it. And what people got to do is withdraw our support from it and start doing for ourselves. That's what we got to do. How long are people going to sit back and beg, this government to do what's right when for hundreds of years all you've gotten is a slap in the face? All you've gotten is this government kicking your ass. That's all. That's all black people have ever gotten from this government.